Hello, I'm Suzanne James. Welcome to Nightshift, the podcast where we talk all things voluntary assisted dying in Australia. Very pleased to be joined again today by one of our original and favourite guests, Dr Nick Carr. Dr Carr has very recently retired from the busy St Kilda practice and is now living the dream, walking the dogs regularly and playing a lot more tennis. And he joins us now from Melbourne. Nick Carr, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, Suzanne. Lovely to talk to you again.
Now let's start with this shindig of a retirement party I keep hearing about. How was that?
Well, it was slightly embarrassing. My wife decided that I couldn't just sneak off into the sunset, and so decided she had to organise a retirement party and did a huge amount of work on an organising committee with a friend, Julie Stone, and my son, Simon. And together they put together this huge event with around about 100 people came along, with a few people speaking, including the very eminent Jane Morris, President of Dying with Dignity Victoria, plus several other speakers who said some quite nice things about me, while at the same time managing to find all the faults in my career, which was mainly done by my three children who were also speaking. So it was a lovely event. I felt very, very honoured.
It's wonderful to have those things said about you while you're still alive rather than waiting for the funeral, isn't it, Nick?
It felt a little bit like a living wake, yes. Hitting off into the sunset and the goodbye.
Yeah, speaking of living waste, you can see why people are organising those more and more, can't you? It's very heartening, isn't it, to have your friends and family get together and say all those great things about you and even the not so great things for it to all be out there while you're still alive.
Well, I may have mentioned before that my beloved sister-in-law, who died just over a year ago using voluntary assisted dying, she held a living wake about 5 months before she died. I'd never been to one of these things before, and I thought, oh, really? It was incredible. It completely converted me, and I'm now a very strong advocate for the concept of the living wake. And as Penny, my sister-in-law, said, she said, "Why would I want all these lovely things said about me when I'm dead?
Yeah.
Let's get together." And she had a magnificent time, and it also gave her a chance to explain to people while she was alive what her experience of cancer and that whole move from being a fit, healthy younger person to this horrible disease, what it was like. It was the most moving, wonderful occasion. I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
So now that you have retired, will you remain involved in the board of Dying with Dignity Victoria? I know they had a lot of reforms pushed through Parliament last year, again in no small measure thanks to Jane Morris, your wonderful president. Are you going to be around for the implementation of those fabulous reforms, Nick?
The answer is definitely yes, and hopefully even more so. So, one of the constraints on me while I was still working in clinical practice was time. Now that I'm not doing that, I'll have more time to devote to working on the board. We've still got a huge amount to do. We've got to get those reforms implemented. Still a lot of work to do in the whole space of dying with dignity. And one of the things I hope to get more involved with is some of the community talks, because one of the things I love is getting out and talking to people. And one of the things DWDV have done very successfully is hold talks all around our state. And so I hope to get a bit more involved in some of those, as well as some of the more meaty core board business work.
And of course, apart from Jane and your team and several others that assisted with those reforms last year, we have the wonderful Emma Vulin to thank, the Victorian MP who unfortunately is suffering late stages of MND and won't be contesting the next election. So shout out to you, Emma. We know you've put in a fantastic amount of work and even in the face of great personal difficulty, and everyone appreciates just what a fantastic job you have done and how much you've improved the legislation for Victorians.
Couldn't agree more, Suzanne. I haven't yet had the privilege of meeting her, but I really hope to do so this year.
So will you be retaining your lecturing role at the university and will you be training incoming VAD doctors? What's the next generation look like for you?
Yeah, so I've actually had a long-term appointment as an honorary senior clinical fellow at the University of Melbourne. And I've been running seminars with the medical students for a number of years now, for both the medical students and also a subsection. There's an Asian Medical Students Association that I've spoken at a couple of times, talking about voluntary assisted dying. So I'll carry on with some of that work. I also will carry on teaching GPs who are training to be general practitioners. I've always done some training work with them, and I'm holding a face-to-face workshop on voluntary assisted dying later in this year. So certainly keep up that work.
But it's also critically important that people with clinical VAD experience are there to support and train the next generation. So that in itself leads to a lot better care at end of life, yeah?
And I've just finished mentoring a young GP. I've never even met her, actually. She just emailed me and we went through all sorts of aspects of it. And I'm delighted to say recently got an email from her saying she's now done her training and so she's now up and ready to go. So there's still that sort of work to do behind the scenes.
And I've no doubt with people like Danielle Jacobs doing hospice visits and everything else that your services with face-to-face contact with patients will still be very much in demand, just in a different format. Yeah.
And of course, I'll be very happy to accompany Danielle anytime, as long as she brings her wonderful therapy dogs with her.
So you're accompanying the dog though, Nick, not Danielle.
Well, Danielle is delightful, but I can't stroke and pat her the way I can Ollie and me and the couple of dogs who are just.
Danielle who? Oh, she's Ollie and me as carer, right? So getting back to the next generation of doctors, do you get a sense at all that VAD isn't the big ethical elephant in the room that it used to be? Is there more of a willingness now for them to talk about it amongst other clinical professionals?
I don't get a sense it's the big ethical element, except when I talk to medical students about this, and I get them to do a poll about who's prepared to be involved and who has a religious or other ethical concern. The last time I did this, and this is done completely anonymously, about 20% of the medical students registered it as a personal, ethical, or religious objection to voluntary assisted dying.
And
Of course,
80% didn't. That's amazing.
yeah. So that's a significant percentage. We must remember that people have that right, and of course that's still going to exist. I think in a general sense, otherwise, one of the things that's surprised me about VAD work, having been very public about it since it became possible in Victoria in 2019, there's been no backlash to me personally, to the practice. The ethics of it seem to be accepted by the majority of the population out there. And I don't think as a doctor, if you're thinking about it, that's the constraint. I've been asked that question. I've been able to reassure doctors that no, I haven't had any problem from that point of view. I think the reasons for people not getting involved are much more to do with the practicalities. It's about the time, it's about the difficulties of managing the system and all the different bits of paperwork and the poor remuneration, all these very complicated aspects that apply.
Yeah, that's the same story I'm getting from doctors all over, including retired Dr. Bernard Shug that I spoke to not so long ago in Tasmania. We've also been in touch with Mike Gaffney down there, who, as you know, was the independent Tasmanian MP who got their VAD legislation through. They're in the process of trying to get their electronic portal put in place because their doctors are still processing everything manually, unlike the
Yeah,
rest of the country.
absolutely.
And there is 17 forms that they have to submit, and they're currently doing that manually. But we're only a couple of $1 million short of fixing it, and the Tasmanian government's agreed to do that. So I'm sure that will help their doctor numbers down there considerably. So that's on the work front for you. Don't know how you ever found time to hold down a job, Nick. I understand you're becoming quite the tennis champion and dog walker in retirement. Tell us about that.
Well, I wouldn't say tennis champion, but I've always been an enthusiast of the arcane game of real or royal tennis, which is only played in a few courts. There's a new court up in Sydney at the Cheltenham Recreation Club, only opened just over a year ago. And this year, the World Masters in real tennis is being held here in Australia. And I'm playing for the old blokes, the Australian team that's tournaments on in a couple of weeks' time at the end of March, early April in Sydney. And then we have the teams events relocate back down here to Melbourne. So we're in furious training for that.
Well, thank you, Nick, for that great overview. It's been great to catch up with you again. It's terrific to see you looking so well and happy in retirement. Very well deserved. You've put in many years for the Victorian health system and particularly for voluntary assisted dying. And I'm sure there is many, many families out there will sincerely thank you for the support and help and guidance that you gave them at their end of life. So great to catch up with you. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see you again.
No, thanks, Suzanne. And yes, I have a little more availability now, so any time. Always happy to speak.
With any luck, I'll catch up with you at the VAD conference in Melbourne in October 2026. You can find the details for that on the Go General Australia website. You've been listening to Dr Nick Carr talking to Nightshift about his ongoing work for voluntary assisted dying despite his recent retirement from medical practice. I'm Suzanne James. Thank you for listening.